Hey everybody, this is Kodak here, and as you can see, we've got something rather special today. This is from Redakai. It was a series put out by Spin Master as an attempt to be a successor to its Bakugan franchise. Bakugan did really well. It was starting to wane, so they tried to make something new, and Redakai turned out to be awful. I did some kind of infamous videos about Redekai in the past, which I kind of regret now. I think I was a bit unfair in those videos, even though Redekai was still bad and still a flop. It came up in the video on Sin number 4 for non-standard card sizes, and it's going to be coming up again in episode 6 in a bit of a starring role. As you might have surmised, anybody familiar with the brand will understand that. But what we have here today is actually something kind of rare, because what we have here is the Redekai Conquer the Kairu animation pitch Bible. Now, a pitch Bible is something that you make when you want to do a quick summation of your show, your concept, to show off to, like publishers, producers, investors to say, hey, I'm making this amazing thing and I need the capital or the development space in order to get it together, so please invest in my project. It's very common to make it like this. It's common to making it hardbound is also it's kind of industry standard practice. It's like wearing nice shoes and having a leather briefcase. It's to give it, like an air of professionalism and stuff like this. And that's how a lot of these are produced, especially for larger companies that are presenting it to like really, really high power investors who really need that genuine look. And it is possible for, even if you're like on your own or a very small production company, it's not at all difficult to get this kind of book made. They are kind of pricey, but there are plenty of online services that will make this kind of full-color hardbound book for you, though you might want to politely ask for your hard copy back in lieu of a quick little like stapled together PowerPoint presentation. But it's designed to be something that somebody can briefly flip through to get the gist of what you're going for. Although this one is a little bit different. It's a bit of an oddball, as we'll see right away. Although let's start with the front. We have it's not a great show, but going through this, it is a pretty good presentation of how a pitch Bible ought to be, so we'll at least learn something from this. So on the front, we have what are clearly our main characters. We have a guy in a blue vest. I think I did a satirical version of this character where the colors were inverted, where he had a blue shirt and a red vest. I can't remember, or I might have done it the other way. I think I had like a chintzy old coat that I sliced up to do it a parody of him, and he has the construction paper hair, so I actually like made a wig out of construction paper to portray that. That was kind of amusing. But a neat thing they do is on the back, it's the characters facing away. They're it's the back. They're facing kind of towards the universe. So this is like a nice little piece of presentation here. We got the characters on the front and then the characters on the back. It's simple, but it's kind of nice. Although you can kind of tell that these rear images are taken probably from model sheets. But let's flip it open. It's even got like the little bookmark here. You see this in like, fancy copies of the Bible and stuff. So here we are, Redekai. In a very near future, fate of the universe depends on 3 teenagers. Oh no. Part Amazing Race and part Indiana Jones, Redekai is a treasure hunt pitting teen Kairu fighters against each other. So it does do something in that it introduces the characters right away. It doesn't really, explore their dilemma at all. Part Amazing Race, part Indiana Jones. I have some problems with this. The idea of the Amazing Race and Indiana Jones is that they go to fancy locations to find treasures and stuff like that, but Amazing Race, I'm not sure if that's a thing about Amazing Race. That's like a reality show, right? So they're always having people like stepping and giving asides to the camera. I honestly think Redekai might have been a more interesting show if they actually could like get the characters to step aside and like do asides to relate their feelings and the situation and a bit of humor. I think that actually kind of could have worked. The thing about Indiana Jones, though, is that one of the key elements of Indiana Jones is that he believes in, preserving the places he visits. He believes in their proper preservation. His famous line from the beginning of the first movie, it belongs in a museum. It's not really so much about coveting the objects as it is about preserving them and introducing them to the world. So the fact that Indiana Jones respects the treasures he seeks out while his enemies don't is a huge element of that. But Redakai, the main characters, Team Stax, they don't have that angle. There's an episode where they blow a hole through the Great Pyramids of Giza, and yeah, that's nonsense. Okay, so, but still, this is called the logline. This is the thing that you say to introduce your premise, and talking about how it's similar to other things. We're talking people who are out to sell a product. This is what the people who are being passed this Bible are into. They're usually not designers or developers. They're people who are in this to find a product that they can sell for money. So occasional comparisons to something similar isn't a bad thing. I'd say make sure you include the word but. It's like Amazing Race, but give it this like killer angle that sets it apart from that thing. So it has something familiar, but it also has something new. That is a good thing to do with the logline. The logline, it should primarily be about the characters, introduces their dilemma, the basic flow of the story, and then a couple comparisons. So as far as logline construction is concerned, not a bad thing. But then we have this. Redakai, coming 2011 to Cartoon Network. So this is why I say that this pitch Bible is a bit of an odd duck, because you typically don't see a pitch Bible that's about something that has already been greenlit and is in production. Usually you put a pitch Bible together to say, hey, I want this show to be made. This can also sometimes coincide with like a brief test animation or a pilot episode, but not something that's already, slated to appear. So I believe that this pitch Bible is something to show to investors to say, hey, here's a project we're already working on that we think is going to be a super exciting smash hit. Would you like to take a look at it? So this was probably sitting in like the offices of like Zodiac, maybe Spin Master, maybe some of these other spots listed over here, like Marathon Media, Cartoon Network, to have ready in case an investor walks in. So there are probably roughly, I'd say, between a dozen and 100 of these that were ever made. So this is actually a pretty rare and special item, which is why it's a shame that it came to me in such lousy condition. It's got like some big old dents on it. It's like all warped. This was probably sitting in some like office space just collecting dust for ages. I don't even know how the store I bought it from obtained this book at all. I don't know. This isn't usually something that leaves an office area professional atmosphere. This isn't really something that gets seen by the public too much. So, like I said, normally a pitch Bible is to tell people what you got here. Although the idea of having a big movie poster element isn't a bad idea. They have it kind of simple on the front here, but there's something that I went to a panel in 2011 in Texas that was hosted by a lady named Rita Street, and she works for a magazine called Kids Screen. They monitor entertainment productions all around the world. They're a great little online magazine to subscribe to. And she talked a lot about how these pitch Bibles go together. And the thing she said was small text, big pictures. So here's where we have something. Yeah, these are all snapshots from both the pilot episode and actually, I think these are from the production trailer. So it talks about Cairo, Team Stax, the good guys, debatable. Then you have the E-Teens, the bad guys, and the Cairo martial arts. These are stills from the production trailer. That's something that you would normally have in place for an actual, like, pitch Bible that doesn't have something that's already slated for it. So this is telling about the story about how there was an energy called Cairo that got spread around the world. One fateful day, millions of Cairo particles rained down on Earth and sought out relics to reside in. So this is about becoming the Cairo Masters and stealing energy for their master Lokar and the Cairo martial art. So let me see. You can see some of the older designs here from the production trailer, which hasn't really been out in high quality. I might try to scan some of these, but this thing is pretty tightly bound. It would be difficult for me to do that, but you can see some of the earlier character designs. The earlier character designs for like the E-Teen alien characters, I think were actually a lot better in the design trailer. They had a lot more personality to them versus the super sanitized version we get in the final iteration. So, storyboards and production stills are what we have over here. These are from the first episode, the pilot episode, not really the test trailer, but from the pilot episode. It's a bunch of storyboards about that. That's not a bad thing to include, including some process. It's like, hey, we already have something going. If you can show that your project already has the ball kind of rolling, it's like, oh, okay, these people, they have some direction. They know what they're doing. They have something that they've actually produced. This isn't just some flight of fantasy in this creator's head. They're actually putting their money where their mouth is. Things like storyboards and production stills are definitely something to include. Redakai characters heroes. Oh boy, red impact font with a white outline. Photoshop at its finest. So yeah, here's another example of a lot of art but small text. This is probably a lot of text here. But artwork of the characters, because for developing for television is a visual medium, so having a heavier focus on the design and the artwork is a perfectly normal thing to do. Things Kai, the rebel with a cause, a charismatic kid and natural-born leader who has the fatal flaw of being way too gifted for his own good. Oh, his flaw is that he's too perfect? Wow, that's like a writing tier below being clumsy and lacking social graces. That's like grade school fan fiction level flaw. Yeah, so it's a nice production Bible. It's well assembled, but you can see some of the rot that would go on to consume the show later, talking about, you know, how he always manages to come up smelling like roses no matter what sorts of terrible, no matter what he does. And it's because the main characters of Team Stax, even though they're the heroes, they don't really act very heroic. Well, talking about heroes, an explanation I heard from a guy called H-Bomber Guy, who did a talk about, a whole video essay about RWBY that's over an hour long, and he swears a whole lot more than I do. I don't swear at all on my videos. But he talks about how the creators of RWBY avoided giving their characters actual real flaws. They kind of abdicated the responsibility of doing that, I think were his words. But they were so precious of their characters that they didn't give them any flaws, because this happens in a lot of mainstream media, because the terror is that if any of your characters have flaws, that means they might act unheroically. And there's this terror that if a character acts unheroically, they stop being marketable. And that is why you see so many sanitized and boring characters in shows like this. First of all, PJ Masks has entered the chat. PJ Masks is a show aimed at friggin' 3-year-olds, where the entire premise is that it's heroes acting unheroically. The whole point of the show is that, like, one of the characters of PJ Masks, they do something bad, and that gets in the way of their hero work, so the other characters have to take them aside and are like, you know, you have to stop doing this, and they're like, okay, and they make up, and they go out and they save the day. Yes, the heroes of PJ Masks act unheroically, but they face the consequences for that. If you have a character do something bad, but they have to face the consequences and they grow as an individual, that is something called good story writing. It used to be we had a lot of these really generic sorts of hero characters, and that used to fly, but then Dragon Ball happened. Dragon Ball Z happened, and all of a sudden younger audiences were craving stories with stronger characters and better narratives, and that has never really gone away, unless they're like literal 3-year-olds, as in the case of PJ Masks. The problem of having so-called flawless characters who, you know, they never do anything wrong, so they never have to face any consequences, is if your characters actually act unheroically, then they never face the consequences for that behavior. And that actually happened in this show. Like, the characters from Team Stax, they blow holes in the Great Pyramids, they light fires inside of dried out forests, they string a guy up by his ankles and have him get dragged away. That actually happens in this show. They do not act heroic. They act incredibly unheroically, but because the show doesn't seem aware of that, the show and the writing don't seem aware of that, they never face any consequences for that. And that is a massive turnoff for this show. They are characters, they don't have any kind of flaws, they don't have, even flaws that heroes might have. Things like taking their friends for granted, or being prone to wrath, or not necessarily seeing the bigger picture, or being a sore loser. Those are traits that happen to heroes all the time. Or, they don't even get placed in like a situation where they have to make a difficult choice and could potentially make the wrong one, because if they make the wrong choice, then they're not the heroes anymore, and blah. I could go on this for all day. I think we're going to move on here. So we have Kai. Maya is introduced kind of the same way, talking about how amazing and smart they are, but not actually about like any flaws or anything like that. And of course we have Boomer. Okay, Boomer. Who is, they talk about how he's strong, but also cracks jokes. So he's your typical big guy character. Then a thing that I think they list as a motive for Kai is that something happened to his dad. His dad disappeared. Oh god, this freaking guy. Mookie, the so necessary comic relief. He is creepy, he's ugly, he's not funny. He serves absolutely no role in the show. He has less reason to exist than the Gargoyles and Hunchback of Notre Dame. He's just, ugh. But again, we're seeing the emphasis on artwork to introduce us to the characters. And then we have Bodai and Lokar, who are clearly arguing on this page about where they should go to eat for lunch. And it's a heated debate. One wants to go to Olive Garden, the other one wants to go to Arby's. Oh, how will this end? So we have Bodai, who's your typical mentor character, and Lokar, who is bad because they need a bad guy. We don't really need any motivation. Yeah, it was Lokar who attacked Kai's father and who is responsible for his disappearance. All right, so moving on to the villains. They really like this one. They use this one several times, where they have... this is a scene, I think it's from Lokar's Shadow. Although, we've already skipped over to characters. Although, you notice somebody missing in this whole thing? Where's Kai's dad? Why doesn't he have a page or a segment or anything? Isn't he like a big motivating factor for the show? We don't really understand why our characters are doing what they do outside of some nebulous desire for self-improvement that doesn't really manifest because apparently they're already perfect and have nowhere to improve. Okay. The villains. Here's where we actually get to some interesting stuff. Like, let's see if I can find the pictures from the... See if I can actually get this in focus here. So here's how the characters were originally designed. They look kind of cool. They look kind of like punkish. They actually look like, interesting sorts of alien characters. Here is how they look in the actual show. Yeah, they don't look quite as interesting as they were before. They got super sanitized in post, and a lot of the edge was taken off of them. This is what happens when a show gets too much focus testing, too much polish, too much removal of any edges, too much, damage to everything that might have made the show interesting. Instead, we have these really generic, really basic character designs. We have the Green Goblin's emo phase over here. We have typical guy with big trench coat. We have your mother wears combat boots over here. Team Redakai, they are basically the Team Stax, but as bad guys. So they're basically Team Stax again. And then we have the only interesting characters in the show, Team Imperias. Team Imperias, I remember saying in the first show, the first video I did about this, and I still stand by this. The Imperias are the most interesting characters in the show because they have two things that Team Stax does not. One, they have internal group conflict, and two, they have a purpose. They are the only characters in the show who actually have a reason to be a part of this. And that's because the main villain, Lokar, has kidnapped their parents and are forcing them to work for him. So they actually have a strong motivation. They also occasionally bicker amongst each other. So they have a bit of internal group conflict. And this is actually a place where they can have an opportunity to learn and improve. But the show treats them like bad guys, so they never actually learn anything. Yeah, kidnapping victims. What terrible villains to be victims of blackmail. But yeah, these are the best characters in the show, bar none. And like I said, it's because of what they have before. They have internal friction and a purpose, and you need those to have interesting characters. You wonder why in a lot of these like older shows that people find the villains more interesting. It's because the villains have a sense of purpose and a strong conflict. They tend to get a lot of strong, traits and characteristics and desire, and that makes them a lot more interesting as characters than your typical bland wannabe heroes. And then we have Team Batacore. These guys were also pretty popular. They're kind of the guys who are just here for they're just kind of here for the snacks. They're here to have fun, and they were pretty popular because they had this really jocular attitude about them. But they, if I remember right, they got kicked at the end of season 1. They were like the most popular characters in the show. I think they were even more popular than the Imperias. They were the most popular characters of the show because at least they were having fun. And they got kicked at the end of season 1, and I don't think they were ever seen again. So they lost so many viewers over kicking the Batacore. But again, it's the very, very brief descriptions, a focus on artwork without much text. You can't like drop like all of your lore into one of these. You need to give people an impression of what the project is going to be like, not the entire backstory. There's a separate Bible for that. That's like a production Bible rather than a pitch Bible. We got some more concept art here. Most of what we have left here is concept art with lists. We have, just the basic monster designs. This is, I don't know, they have like multiple different fonts, and this is kind of dry. I do wish that this is something that they probably could have pushed a bit more rather than just showing off the various characters. Although, like I said, heavy on art, lots of color, lots of high quality art, got some backgrounds, got some more concept art, got some more storyboards, got some designs, and I think a lot of this, a lot of it looks like it's painted. I think a lot of this is 3D CG. The stuff in the Escaper is very clearly 3D CG. A lot of shows rely on having 3D CG for a lot of things, for things like character actions and placement in order to make sure that everything flows together correctly. And then they go over it with ink and drawing where needed. These are where we get Disney creations like Deep Canvas coming to work. You can see some interesting production. Like they have some production on... they have a production for the chase scene from, Heaven's Feel, the first Heaven's Feel movie that's pretty interesting to go over. They have the Stickman, the computer animated Stickman running along, and then they have the sort of rotoscoped animation on top of it. It's really interesting. So, like I said, showing off a lot of the production and design work is very important. If I didn't know the product that came out of this, and I didn't notice the things like how Kai's flaw is that he's too perfect, I might have had some really high expectations for what came out of this. It's just a shame for what we actually got. So, oh yeah, and here's a bunch of stills from the original trailer. We got Kai's dad down. Oh, I was wrong. He does appear in the book, just in the very last page. But the idea that Kai's dad is missing isn't really brought up as a motivation at all in the show until like the episode before they rescue him. It's a really slapdash together production. But yeah, that's a look at the Redakai Pitch Bible. I hope you learned something from my incessant rambling. My real ambition is to get my hands on the Kairu Cube, which is like this weird sort of weird unfolding thing. You'll get to see it in action in episode 6, the trailer version at least. There was at least one prototype made for an advertising trailer for it, so we'll see what happens. I'd love to get my hands on it, or one, if there are more than one. But yeah, that's a look at the Redekai Pitch Bible, and until next time, this is Kodak signing off.